Welcome to Let's Talk Jobs. My name is Francis Arimo, and my goal is to help people get the career and the salary that they deserve. Today, I'm talking with Ashton Elizabeth. She's a software engineer based in Seattle, and she currently works for Indeed, the largest job site in the world. Ashton, how are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing well. It's a sunny, above 70-degree day in Seattle, so I literally am not allowed to complain about anything.
There you go.
So I'm actually doing lovely. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. So, my first question of this podcast, and first question I'm going to ask all my guests is, have you ever been fired before?
I was in a situation where I had the privilege of working in a job that had an intersection of being a job and a passion.
Nice.
But I felt like I had hit a ceiling and there was no more growth for me there. And so I decided, it was really hard for me to make that decision, but I decided to move on.
Okay.
And because it was the intersection of job and passion, leaving, I really wanted to make sure I left in a way that, I would make myself proud. So I gave the company 6-week notice that I was going to quit. I told them that I would hire my replacement because I was a hiring manager at that time.
Yeah.
And then I would train my replacement before I left. So I would do all of that in 6 weeks. I executed and delivered on all of those things. And then as I walked into the building on the last day, the manager asked me to meet him for coffee, and they tried to terminate me and get me to sign some non-disclosure papers. So
Wow. Wait, did you sign? Are you allowed to have this conversation now?
I I did not sign those papers.
Okay.
There was a non-disclosure agreement that was signed earlier on. But so yeah, just out of safety, I won't go into those details, but yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, so they tried to fire me on my last day. So that's fun.
So wait, on your last day, surely you're gonna have a leaving do or a party, or wasn't that a plan? Drinks?
I actually did have a party to attend. There was a little kind of end of the year, end of the party, going away party for me thing, and I went specifically for that. And before I could get there, I was engaged in this conversation. You had mentioned those feelings of feeling disposable or thrown away, or that the world is ending. And in full transparency, when I was delivered the message and handing the papers, I immediately started crying. Because I had given so much, and because I was so passionate about the work I had done, I had already given a 6-week notice, hired my replacement, trained my replacement. I had done everything to make sure the company was okay. And I just felt I don't know, betrayed. And the only thing that came over me was to cry in that moment. So yeah, that was something that was really hard, but it definitely was the thing that pushed me into the career I'm in now. And
Well,
now that I'm on the other side, I can say I'm grateful for it, although it's definitely taken some years to get over it. It's I don't want to see their logo for a long time.
Right.
I don't want to see it.
I hate you guys. You guys are the worst company in the world. But
Yeah.
Thank you.
But
What you meant it for evil, but it worked out for good. So yeah. Okay, cool. So let's rewind a little bit. Let's go. What was your first job? Do you remember what your first career was? The first job that you worked and they paid you money. So it doesn't count with cousins asking you to do the dishes, nothing like that.
Nothing like that.
First
Not
paying
even
job.
my weekend garage sales that I would have at my grandma's house.
So wait, talk to me about that. How does that work?
Yeah, so without getting into too much, I was actually raised by my grandmother, who has a lovely habit, pre-coronavirus, of going to thrift stores and consignment stores and just finding things that she loves. And then she just stores it in the garage, and things pile up. And so as a kid, I would go through these cycles where I would just want to get rid of some of that stuff. And so I would say, hey, I'm going to clean the garage. And she'd be like, great. and I would just have a garage sale. And so I would do that
No,
almost like every other weekend and like
no.
hustle to make money. So I would say
How
like
much
that
money
was,
did you make?
I mean, I wasn't making like, I was like $30, $40, every weekend or
A
so.
weekend? Now that's decent.
Not too bad. Not too bad.
That's
Not too bad.
reasonable. That's reasonable. That's some pocket money right there. That's all right.
It was fun. I really enjoyed the whole process because it was more than just kind of selling items, right? I had to do all the
Yeah.
marketing. I had to make signs, put all the signage out for all the items, for pricing and everything else. So really, it was like that whole process. But my real first job, I was actually 14 and I had applied in California. You have to be 16 in order to work. But I applied for early permit in high school. So at 14, I got a job at a movie theater called Cinema Star. They actually don't exist anymore. They got bought by a chain who got bought by another chain who got bought by another chain. And it's coronavirus. So I don't know if anybody's going to the movies these days. But yeah, that was my first job. I was an usher. So I was one of those people who swept up all the popcorn that we all like to throw on the floor at the end of the movies.
But you weren't allowed to see some of the movies.
I wasn't allowed to what?
But you weren't old enough to watch some of the movies, but you were sweeping the popcorn for.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I wouldn't say I didn't actually see a lot of those movies, but like yeah, the soundtracks maybe were like not suitable for work for me at the time.
Okay, cool.
I loved that job. And if I were to be asked, like, what was my favorite job, that one still ranks as one of like the most favorite jobs I have had in my life. And I still have a lot of close friends that I made at that time. So
I love that.
Star.
That is amazing. Okay, cool. So let's go through this journey with you. So did you go to college?
Yes. Yeah. I went to University of California, Riverside. Shout out Highlanders. Woo woo.
Whoop. Hold tight the Highlanders. Big up the Highlanders. I really don't know what it is.
It's a bear. I had to learn that as well. Yeah.
Okay, that's amazing. Okay, cool. So after you left the Highlanders, what career or what job did you get? Or what did you do for work?
Yeah, so the first job I had was actually a behavior therapist for kids with autism.
Wow.
We did what was applied behavior therapy, and I had one-on-one sessions with kids anywhere from the age of 4 to my oldest client was actually 17. Very special case because back then this was like 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
There were early studies that the techniques that we were using would not work on kids over the age of 6 or 7. And so to have the opportunity to work with somebody, much older than that was like such a great privilege. And so, yeah, I did that. And then after I went more into nonprofit.
How long did you do that for?
So I actually did that for like 2.5 years. And the only reason I quit was because I actually got into a really bad car accident.
Wow.
Yeah, I got into a car accident, was completely totaled, and it was really unfortunate. But I had asked, this sounds terrible because like the company otherwise is really good, but I had asked for a leave of absence during that time. I wasn't in a situation where I could afford to buy a new car right away. And so I'm from California and I was in California at the time. The California Highway Patrol, their police reports were backed up for like at least 7 months. And so in order for me to go through and file a claim with my insurance, I needed the police report. And so it took me about 7 months in order to get the police report. I ended up getting a lawyer. I had to sue. I mean, I won and everything else because it wasn't my fault. I actually was hit by a drunk. But long story short, they did not grant me the leave of absence. And so I ended up having to quit the company, which led me to the next job after this. But I absolutely adored that job. I adored all the clients. I think about the kids all the time and hope they're doing well and the families. But yeah, so from there, I ended up moving into nonprofit where we created
So before we go into the non-profit, how much are you getting paid in that company?
Okay, how much was I getting paid during that company? So this was like 2007. I would
Yeah.
say at this point in my career, up until when I became a software engineer, that was the most money I had made.
Okay.
And I was getting paid, I think I started at like $15 an hour. And by the time I left, I was like $22 an hour.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
And I was working anywhere from like 32 to 40 hours and then sometimes overtime if they needed.
Okay. Okay. So I'm just gonna do the maths. I'm gonna do that. So
Do it, do it.
do it. I did 52 weeks in a year, so about 31K.
Yeah,
There or thereabouts.
yeah.
Um. Okay. Cool. About 31K. All right. Cool.
In like 2006, 2007, 2008.
So like, I know I should be asking age, but how old was you at the time? Roughly, how old were you at the time?
I think like 20, 21, 2021.
And you was living in Cali, right?
Yes, this is all in
Cool,
California. I was
cool,
still living
cool.
with my grandma. Yeah,
Okay, cool. So then,
living at
I
home.
mean, so you're
I mean,
21
my
years
UC
old.
was a mile away from my house, and then my elementary, middle school, high school was all within that same radius.
So you visited a whole mile radius, and that was kind of your world, that mile radius.
Walkable,
It was walkable. I
walkable.
love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So okay, so let's fast forward a little bit. You've started to work for a non-profit.
Mhm.
And what did you do in with that company?
Yeah, so this nonprofit was actually called Hope Through Housing. Love their mission.
Yeah,
They worked to actually build low-income housing complexes.
yeah,
Um, and I worked in the division that in those low-income housing complexes, we set up after-school programs for the kids.
yeah,
And so that was awesome. I was considered like a program manager, coordinator. I was in charge of a couple of sites from Riverside to a city called Rialto out in California. Met a ton of really awesome kids, had a lot of fun. But then, wanted to change. I wanted to get out of California. And so
yeah.
ended up having, had a different calling and had to leave, but also still think about those kids all the time and had good memories there.
I'm just kind of waiting for the technical side to come up because right now you're
Oh,
telling me lots of stuff and it's like this
there's
sounds
none.
amazing,
I mean,
but
we can
there's
talk about
nothing.
MySpace. I mean,
I mean,
that's where the tech shined. Yeah.
yo, I had a MySpace. I was able to do the little designs. That's when I became a graphic designer and a software engineer doing MySpace. Put the two together. I was amazing.
I'm saying.
Um,
It's
so yeah,
funny
big
you
up.
say that because I think like now that I reflect on it, I would say like one area that I would probably say I excelled that was I didn't think was technical back then, but I would consider it technical now is Excel and like spreadsheets.
Excel,
Yeah.
really?
I love spreadsheets and stuff. Yeah. Doing that. And then once I learned how to like use the functions and like the lambdas in Excel to do a lot of math, do a lot of pivoting for you, that is all basically just software engineering code.
Yeah,
Just
we're gonna go into that. We're gonna go into that. We're gonna talk about all of those areas. But I really want to go through your journey. So I
sure.
really want to go through your journey. We're gonna come back to that though. So talk to me around what was your next career after that? So you're still
Yeah.
in California.
After Hope Through Housing, that's where I moved to New York.
So what was the plan when you moved to New York?
To just move and figure it out.
It's brave though. Did you have any family that lived there? Did you
Oh
have
no, it
any
was me
safety nets?
and my partner moved together.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It was just us.
Okay, cool.
And we both were just gonna figure it out. Neither of us had jobs lined up or anything like that.
Wait, how much money did you have when you moved?
Oh, I didn't have that much at all, to be honest. Maybe a
Like,
couple thousand, if that. Yeah, it was definitely silly, to say the least. But like,
and
that's what
how old are you?
you.
How old were you?
Oh, I was 25, 24, 25.
Oh my gosh! Wow,
Yeah, I don't
wow.
know. I think there's a phase everybody goes through at that time, and
I
you have to
did
like,
not go through that phase,
really.
but yeah, no, no. 25. I was
Maybe
getting married.
some folks. Oh,
I was getting married.
blessings on your households. You have a lovely family. That was obviously the right thing for y'all at that time. Not where I'm at. No.
Okay, cool. Let's keep it going. So
Yeah.
you
So
get
I
to New
moved to New
York.
York. And then I, growing up relatively poor, always knew how to work, how to have a job. And I've never been ashamed of like getting a job. Like we didn't go into a lot of like minor details of like odd jobs I had growing up in California, but like I've delivered newspapers like before, like I had no shame, right? So
Yeah.
I was just applying, trying to get a job anywhere I could. I landed a job at Macy's. Oh,
Ooh, hold that Macy's.
I shouldn't say this because I hated that job.
Oh, Macy's still be a sponsor of the show. This is
Yeah,
how
maybe
it
I
is.
shouldn't say that.
I love Macy's, by the way.
You
But
really?
'cause-
I
yeah, I
hated
love
that
Macy's.
job so much that I have never done this before, but I walked off that job and just never came back.
Are you joking?
And the manager
Oh
called
no,
me
Macy's
like
hates
4
you.
days in a row, just like, "Hey, are you coming into your shift? Hey."
No, no way.
I have never, and it's so out of character for me. It was torture. It was torture. It was torture. Yeah. Oh my
Sorry, I'm just okay. Okay,
I
cool.
think I've
Okay,
only stepped foot in Macy's maybe 2 times after that as well.
Macy's hates you. So you're talking about how you just like no, they hate you. How can you just not turn up and you don't pick up your phone?
Ooh wee, it was a mess. Mm-mm. It's also
Wow.
like my first experience working in New York, which
Yeah, that would
that
have been a lot.
that's a whole other podcast. If you want to do
It's
that,
different.
we
It's a
can
different
do
world.
that.
Yeah.
It's a different world. Like yes, it was just a different world, and all I could do was just like, okay, this is not for me, and leave. I just left. Like in the middle of the shift was I cannot do this anymore. This is nope.
Are you
It wasn't
joking?
sitting right with my spirit. Okay.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't. No, you're a horrible person.
I'm not. I am not. I feel
You're a
like my
horrible
karma is
person.
good. Look where I'm at right now.
No, you're a horrible person.
Not meant for me.
Um,
Yeah.
okay, cool. So you walked out of Macy's, and when was
We can't
your
say that.
first?
We're gonna mention Macy's.
Yeah, we are because Macy's is an amazing company, and you're a horrible person. So we're definitely going to
I'm
mention that.
not a horrible person.
I'm, and I'm leaving this in.
You never
Um,
even asked why, but
it's too late. I'm not going to ask why. Let's keep it moving. So, oh man, it's gonna be fun. So, so what was your after you walked out of Macy's? What was your kind of real stable job, where they put you on a fixed term contract or salary?
yeah. Yeah. So that would be the next job that I had in New York, which would be the only
Okay,
other job I had in New York, which would be the one that tried to fire me on my last day working there.
okay. So we're not gonna say that company. That's fine. So, what was your job title in that company?
Yeah. I was a product/program manager.
Okay, and what did the company do, or what was the um, what industry was the company in?
I would say like recreational sports
Okay,
industry.
Okay.
slash like like co-working area.
Okay.
They were kind of like a hybrid business,
Okay.
first of their kind.
And what was your like duties or kind of responsibilities on a day-to-day basis?
Say that one more time.
What was your responsibilities or your duties on a day-to-day basis whilst working for them?
Yeah. So responsibilities on the day-to-day basis were split. They were either managing the live programs that were happening in the facilities that day, or externally, either creating partnerships, creating new products, helping open other facilities.
Wow.
Really depended on what the focus was for kind of like that day. But
Wow.
I was very much like a thought leader in my product space. So there were like different product areas, and I had one vertical that was honestly it was focused on kids. Which, if you look at my resume, that's literally
Yeah.
every other job before that. Yeah. So I was focused in kids. So yeah, just like creating new partnerships, creating new products, new offerings. Helping define the brand voice, the
Yeah.
mission. Yeah.
So how many hours did you work a week? Because it feels like
There, yeah. Honestly, it was so blurred. It was so blurred because it was such a passion of mine. Like everything was work and everything was that passion. And so
yeah.
I like breathed it really. If there's an email that came, no matter what time of day it was, I would respond to it. If somebody needed something,
Wow.
no matter what time of day it was, I would respond to it. So while I was salaried, I was working all the time. And in New York, like New York doesn't shut down. And so I mean, I
Yeah.
clearly remember like struggling through a blizzard, like trying to get to work and trying to get home from work. Like it's just nonstop. So and like on a good week, maybe 60 hours was
Whoa, that's a good week. What's a bad week?
like 80,
Wow.
just nonstop.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so how much did you get paid?
By the time I left, I had signed an offer letter of 50,000, but I had never completed that year of that offer letter. But yeah, I had signed an offer letter for 50K.
So how much were you getting paid before you got the pay rise?
Ooh, I think 32. Like I was making like decent money for New York standards, right? I mean, let's take you to New York really quick. Just like as you're shaking your head at the
Yeah.
rate of salary. When if I were in California and let's say that I were to get a job as a server, minimum wage in California at that time I believe was like 7.25, 7.50 minimum wage, $7.50.
Wow.
In New York City, and don't quote me on it, but it was somewhere between $2 and $3 servers would make.
Wow.
And the rest would have to be made up in tips
Tips.
if
Yeah.
people tipped well, right? And so when you hear something like, you're making 32, it seems like it's really low, which it is. Like it's very hard to live in New York City on that salary. I
Okay.
ended up having to like create roles for myself over and over again to kind of move up in the ladder. Like I literally wrote my own roles and responsibilities. I literally titled the position I wanted and said, this is the name of the position. These are all the responsibilities that I'm currently already doing. And these are the opportunities to do more if I had the time, the space, the personnel to do it. And so I kept doing that. And that's how I ended up getting paid more, because it was hard to deny when you have it written down that this is all the work that's getting done based off of what I'm doing. This is also all the revenue that's being generated, right? You're showing quarter after quarter, I've increased revenue 125%, which these are real numbers. It was like hard for them not to justify it. And so, yeah, just, I think it's like unfair to kind of wash over and be like, oh, they realized it. It's like, no, I had to fight really, really hard for them to like realize the value. So yeah, that's how it happened. I ended up basically writing a proposal for myself for the role.
So let's talk about it a little bit. Like I really want to dig into that a little bit further.
Yeah.
So what gave you the confidence to kind of say, this is what I'm doing, this is the value that I bring to the table, and this is what I believe I deserve because of that?
It's like interesting because I don't know if confidence would be the right word per se.
Frustration.
Right? Yeah, it was. I would definitely say it was like a mix of like naivete. It was like I was like not to like okay no to overly romanticize it, right? I was like in love with like this role. It was like such an intersection of like my passion, my true passion, and a job that I like really loved. And so it was more of like I saw myself doing it for a long time, and knew that it was the only way for me to continue doing it. There was no way for me to do what I needed to do it at the salary that I was making with like even like the authority or the access, right? Like I needed to have a larger position or a larger title in order to influence the people that I needed to influence to make the change that I wanted to see. And so I don't know. It was just like literally like hitting your head against the ceiling and just being like,
Yeah.
this is the only way that only way you can get out of it. It's like this is literally what I'm doing. Write it all down, and then it's like this is a whole position.
Yeah.
make me
So
this role.
how long did you work for the company for?
4 years, I guess.
4 years?
4 years, yeah.
Wow.
It was like maybe I didn't make it all the way to the end of the fourth year, but
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So
But that's how
just
I knew, right? I had already done all that work to like I had created all the positions. I had created all of my upward movement and growth, and then I hit a ceiling where everything I had done before just like wasn't working. There was nowhere else to grow, or they just didn't want me to grow in there, right? Like, so yeah, after 4 years, it was like, okay, there's nowhere for me to move. It was hard. It was a very hard decision, but I had to go. I had to do what was best for me.
so what was the plan? So when you kind of put in your notice before they turn crazy, when you put in the notice and said, "Hey, I'll give you 6 weeks," what was your plan at that point? Um,
So my plan at that point, honestly, was I was looking back and like I had mentioned earlier that I had started working for real at 14, but that was like nonstop. And so at this point, I was like, this is the first time in my adult life where I could like pause for a second. So I'm just gonna take some time off and just chill. So I had planned to like take at least 2 weeks to just relax, to
two
enjoy.
weeks? Wait, only two? Sorry, I'm so sorry.
I know, but like keep in mind what my salary was, right? How much money
Okay.
can you actually save realistically? I still at
Okay.
this point was planning a move back across country. So like that's all I could afford. And like 2 weeks was like stretching it. Like that was just like, okay, I have to do that for myself. I was like stretching it to take like 2 weeks off. But the plan really was I want to go back home. I miss my family. And
Yeah.
I want to move into some sort of technical role.
Okay.
I feel like I have to like back up a little bit because like there's this I do believe in a lot of like serendipity at times, and there's this really lovely culture in Brooklyn that I fell in love with. I actually lived in Brooklyn when I was in New York, where
Yeah.
people just like leave books out on their stoops, and you can just like grab them, or you can exchange. You can drop a book off, or you could grab one. And so maybe a year before I had decided to quit, I started paying attention to these books. And for some reason, I was drawn to all of these technical books, all these technical books. So by the time I had decided to quit, I had accumulated a lot of free technical books. And I was like, okay, I'm going to dive in and I'm going to learn something technical. So I had all these books. I was like, I'm going to go home, move back with my grandma, and I'm going to learn how to code. And so that was kind of like the rough plan. It wasn't really like a true plan.
So crazy. That is actually so crazy. So
It
people
gets
will
crazier
leave.
because I'm going to come back to those books.
Okay, cool. So that sounds so amazing. That not everybody wants to go to Brooklyn and just live there. That's pretty much you
I
sold Brooklyn.
I recommend it to anyone to do it if you can. Yeah, it definitely changed my life for the better, opened my eyes.
Wow.
There's so much culture there in New York. There's just so much. We can do a whole episode just on New York, man. I swear, I'm in Brooklyn.
Okay, cool. All right, cool. So, um, where were we? So, you got these books. You're thinking I want to be technical. You giving your 6 weeks notice.
In my 6 weeks
You had
notice.
your,
At this
you've had
point,
your, yeah,
at this point, I am, chilling. I'm enjoying New York. I'm going out, riding my bike a lot, going to the parks, that kind of thing. And my partner, who had gone through a coding boot camp through General Assembly, which those are
yeah.
typically priced at a couple of zeros after the comma. Um,
Like just so we can get a picture, just so people will know roughly
yeah,
or how much
I
it,
don't know the details, but I think it was like
yeah.
10,000 or 15,000, something.
Whoa. Wow. Okay. Wow.
Very expensive.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so he was fully aware that this was the direction I was going to go. He wasn't necessarily that interested in going back to California. I was, because I wanted to go back to my family. It'd been almost 5 years since I had moved. And he had the bright idea to look up free coding boot camps.
Yeah.
Like, that blew my mind, right? Which is why I think it's always so important to have people around you who just have different life experiences and think differently.
Yeah.
I have been, especially from my life experience where we grew up, very poor. You understand there's no such thing as a free lunch, and people just don't want to give you things for free. Like, people didn't give me things for free growing up. Everything I had, I earned literally by myself. I wasn't even the kid, like I said, I worked at 14, would never ask my grandma for anything. She didn't have it, right? And so it never dawned on me to Google free coding boot camp. So advice to anybody, if there's anything you want to do, Google free that thing, figure out if there's a way that you can get it for free. But yeah, he
Free
found
Tesla.
Want to talk about Teslas? I want one.
I want one so bad. Free Tesla. Give it to me
Give it
now. Okay.
I bet
cool.
you there's a way to get a free Tesla too.
And I'm going to figure it out and get one.
He found a free coding school, and I looked into it and instantly fell in love.
Wow.
Yeah, it was called.
What's the name of the coding school?
Yeah, the name of the coding school is Ada Developers Academy. It focused on getting women and gender diverse people into the tech field, with a focus area on like people of color, particularly. Nice. I really, really loved that mission. If you look back on all the jobs that we've talked about, a lot of the work that I've done has been centered around purposeful work and helping people, making some sort of impact. Even in the role I sit in now, right, at Indeed, it has like a mission of helping people get jobs. And so I would say anything that I work in or anything that I do always has to be purpose driven. And so for the school to have that social justice component and it was free. Like, you're just like, how? This seems fake. This is fake news. Yeah. Who made this up? The only problem was that it was in Seattle. I had never any intention of living in Seattle.
I mean, isn't Seattle the rainy city?
Like, right? Like, what am I supposed to do?
I mean,
what?
Why don't everybody want to go there? It's a no-brainer. The rainy city, right?
Like, I had zero interest in coming to Seattle. And then and so I was like, fine, let's figure it out. Let's see if I can do it. And so the way that the school works.
So pause. Let's just before we kind of go into that. How does what is a boot camp?
Yeah. So a boot camp or coding school is like what I prefer to refer to them as. They're just like a non-traditional, or think of it as a I think we used to call them like trade school back in the day. That teaches you a specific trade. These coding schools or boot camps are facilitated in various different ways. They can be completely online, which I failed to mention this, but I had taken a few online courses before even looking into free coding boot camps.
Okay.
There are websites like Udemy or Coursera. I even think maybe on Skillshare you can go and people develop these courses and you can get deals. I remember paying like $2.99 or something like that for some courses that taught me basic HTML and CSS before getting into the code school. But I would consider those like boot camps. Some people offer free online ones where they'll stream and you can just like hop in, learn a lesson or learn a whole language. There's like the ones that my partner went to. His was an like after work program. So I think it was like from 6 to 8, Tuesday and Thursday for X amount of time. And then there's the school I went to, which was a fully immersive program. And so the idea was that if you fully immerse yourself, you can learn it faster and then you can get into the career sooner. And
so how many days a week? How long each day? What was it looking like?
Yeah, so for Ada Developers Academy, it was a commitment of in-school time from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And that's in-school learning. That doesn't include all of the homework assignments and projects that are assigned to you that you have to do every day. So there's the caveat that you cannot work during this program. It's impossible to work during this program. And so it's 9 to 5. The classroom period is 5 months. After that 5 months, you have 1 month to execute on a capstone project, which is you're just building your own thing and then you present it to somebody else. I think it was like a science project or something like that.
Yeah.
Or whatever. And then after that 6 months, 5 months classroom, 1 month building your own thing, then you are guaranteed a 6-month internship at one of the sponsoring companies. I landed an internship at Indeed.
Wait, so before we kind of go into that, so how did you survive? So you're in a new city, you're in Seattle, which sounds crazy. You're doing a course for free. How did you eat? And was your partner working? What happened? What does that look like?
Yes. So yeah, let's back up a little bit, right? And so we're in New York, right? We find the school. We're like, okay, this actually looks like a plan. This looks like a thing we can do. How do we make this work? So he's in a position where we're both like, we're over New York. He's not really ready to go back to California. So he looks into what jobs he can get in Seattle. And he lands a job at Amazon.
Okay, that's a separate conversation. We're definitely gonna do that. So with concerns to you, how did that work out for you? So you're doing your course, like, was you totally reliant on his money? Like, how did things work out for you?
Not at all. I would never, ew.
Like, no.
Yeah,
Why
no.
do that?
But
Why don't rely on anybody else?
I think that's just like important context, right? As we're talking about the story, I feel it's important to acknowledge and recognize the privilege that comes with that, but then also acknowledge the additional steps that come with it. So yeah, he specifically looked for a job that he could hold when we moved here. So that was part of the plan for me to go to the school, him to go out there. We were going to do that. When we got here, when it came time for me to like go to school and have a job and all that kind of stuff, I couldn't have a job. So I ended up taking out a loan. Now, yes. The thing with the loan is the school that I went to, Ada Developers Academy, worked out a deal with a lending company that gave us a really, really low interest rate. And we're more lenient on your like credit score and like, your history. And so it made it a lot easier for people to get a loan because like full transparency, like my credit wasn't that good, like at all, especially living in New York City. No, I'm chilling now, but yeah. So I was very lucky to be able to have an opportunity to take on that loan because like, to be real, there are things that you need, even outside of, let's say you had a house where, all your food and your security and whatnot is taken care of. For me as like a woman, like I have to worry about like tampons and stuff. Like I can't.
Oh my gosh. How are you going to pay for that?
right?
That's how you're gonna pay for that.
You have to get a
That's
loan.
important.
You have to get a loan to buy tampons. Like that's
You have to get a loan.
you have to get a
You have
loan
to
to
get a
buy
loan.
tampons.
You have to get a
Um,
loan. You have to get a loan. Fair.
you do.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I will say that Ada Developers Academy, the community is so supportive that if you were in a situation where you absolutely needed tampons, right, you couldn't afford it, like they had stock there, so you can always go there and like grab some, right?
Wow.
But that's just an example to show though that like you can quit your job, but there's still other things that you need. And
Yeah.
so the way that I was
Yeah.
able to supplement that was to get a loan that, you know, I'm still paying for now, but
Yeah.
that was part of the sacrifice. So it's free. School's free, but it always costs something.
Yeah. Of
Opportunity
course.
always
Of
costs
course.
something. Yeah.
So, you got the loan.
Got the
You
loan.
paid for the tampons, which are essential, because every month.
Like
So,
rent.
like rent. You didn't even talk about rent or the light bill. No, you went straight to the tampons. Okay. Anyway, so you paid your loan, or you're paying your loan, or
I'm
you got a
still
loan.
paying my loan now. I'm still paying my loan.
You got a loan, just to survive.
Yeah.
And so at 6 months, um, talk to me about what happens next. So you get this, you do the course. How was the course? Was it like fully intense? How hard was it? Did they, what does that look like?
Before actual school started, Ada Developers Academy offered kind of like preschool. And it was an opportunity for people who were brand new to tech, right? And I was, based on my story, right, am pretty new to tech.
100%.
So they gave you like a course that kind of went through the basics. So when you came to class the first day, it wouldn't feel such like a foreign language to you. And so I ended up doing that, which was like 4-6 weeks before the course started.
Okay.
And a lot of those concepts really felt like I was dense, like my reading comprehension was well below like the average person. Like none of the concepts made sense. I think one of the hardest thing I struggled with was like just how to count from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, because like our brains usually start at 1, but the computer started at 0, and like my brain couldn't do it, and I just felt like such a failure. And it felt like that for the first probably like 6 or 7 weeks.
Wow.
Even into Ada Developers Academy. And then I don't know, then it starts to click. And then you start to like recognize the patterns, and then things start to make sense. And then you're able to describe your ideas a little bit better. And so I would say the nature of it felt really difficult to begin with because it was such a brand new concept to me. I had no real kind of like technical background. And the stuff that I had learned on like the Udemy courses were great, but it really wasn't coding in the way that we use it for work. And that's what Ada Developers Academy is teaching you. It's teaching you how to code for the job. Whereas what I was learning was kind of like teaching you how to code for fun, teaching you how to code, just like build your own blog or something like that. So yeah, it was tough to start, but then I don't like using the word easier because it's like relative. It depends on that person and you know where they are. But yeah, it felt easier for me as things progressed. And then that cycle started all over again once I got into internship. It's just like new information. So, it's just like, I am dense. I don't understand anything. And then I'm now like two years later, I'm like, today, I'm like, oh, okay. I think I feel like a software engineer, kind of. I think learning anything new, there's a learning curve. It's going to start off a bit challenging, but the more you stick with it, the more you practice, right? It's fundamentals. Every day, just keep practicing. It'll get better. And then soon enough, it's like second nature, and then you know it. And then you're Kobe Bryant. May he rest in peace.
I love that.
Yeah.
So just a quick one. So you're doing the internship, and by the way, Like, what does that pay?
Oh, internship paid minimum wage, which in Seattle, Washington, is $15 an hour.
Okay, okay, okay. So, well, technically, it's kind of what you got in California, and
Yes.
it's also similar to what you got in New York
Yes.
for the first part. So, it's not the worst thing in the world.
No, I
Oh,
mean, that's part of what made, I think, the decision to come so easier,
mm,
right? Is that you're right, that I would have probably ended up in a job where I was making roughly about the same that I had been making in New York, maybe a little bit more just by the nature of how moving from job to job works. But
yeah,
the added benefit here was that it was a complete career change. I got to learn
yeah,
something new. Whereas if I were to do that in a more traditional route, I'd probably end up in a lot more debt because I had to take out a lot more loans in
yeah,
order to do this, and a lot more time. I don't think I would
yeah.
have been able to do it in a year I did it here in a year. So
So you did the course for 6 months,
Mhm.
did internship for 6 months. So within a year, you landed this job working for Indeed.
yeah.
So I guess the question is, how much of a difference is your pay with Indeed compared to your pay when you was working making $15 an hour?
it's
Oh, it's that type of money. Is that you're making laughing money? Is that what you're talking about
yeah,
now?
it's laughable. I remember I mean, my opinion about it has definitely changed, but I remember when I first saw my offer letter, I was just like, what am I supposed to do with all this money? Like
No,
it didn't like
no,
make any sense. Well, because like I had never seen numbers like that on like an offer letter before. So
no.
it's
That is so crazy.
yeah, it's pretty intense.
So you, and the crazy thing and I thought it's a testament to your skill because you don't pay someone that's not good to a lot of money to work for your company. Like it indeed is a great company to work for, but they're not charity.
I agree. They're
And
not
so I
sharing,
really want
definitely not. But I mean, I think that the relationship between me and Indeed is definitely is mutually beneficial, right?
of
I
course.
think there is a large focus, especially now, of ensuring that there is a diverse workforce in the tech industry. And I think Ada Developers Academy's mission is exactly that. And so while I also agree that I do bring a lot to the table in terms of like my technical skill set, I think just my presence there alone has helped shift a lot of perspectives and open a lot of doors. I remember as an intern, I remember it was like week one as an intern, right? And I go from this in classroom experience of coding to real life coding on the job. And there are some commands that I have to type that were very uncomfortable. They had to deal with like slave master terminology in the code
Oh
base, which
wow.
is a very common coupling of words that we use in coding. And I had never experienced that before and was very much caught off guard. Made me flash back to just like a lot of stories and just like a lot of hurt and pain. I just like never thought that I would have to be like interface with like that kind of content. And it's really just like
Yeah.
the coupling of the words, but the way that the words were used were definitely in the context of a slave master and a slave that's like following the orders of a slave master. And so
Yeah.
as an intern, like I'll back up a little bit more. Like I went into this very much not wanting to stand out per se.
Yeah.
Um, I was aware very much of the type of privilege I had as like a Black woman. I'm lighter skinned, so oftentimes like white people find it easier to engage with me, things like that. And so I never wanted to use that privilege while I was working at Indeed. I really wanted my skill set to be the voice of like who I was and why I was there. And so with that in mind, I never wanted to like stand out, never wanted to like raise an issue, but this was so uncomfortable that I couldn't even code. And so this was like week one of my intern, and I had to go into a meeting with my manager and tell him that I felt very uncomfortable having to type a command that said slave these items and then like, you know, type in the items that I wanted to slave.
Wow.
And he looked at me and was just like, I cannot believe it took you sitting in my office for me to realize how awful that language is.
Wow.
Yeah. And kind of
Wow.
that's where it started. And so that's why I say that I agree that definitely, you know, and Indeed has not made offers to interns before in the past. So I agree that there's a skill set there, but just having somebody with like a different perspective is so vastly important there. And I was
Yeah.
happy that I was able to like shift that perspective, because I also too was like, really? It took me sitting in here for you to realize that?
How brave is that? So
Yeah, it
I've
was terrifying.
yeah, that's hard. I've been in similar scenarios where um, I'm looking at things and I feel uncomfortable, and I've said nothing. Um, Especially earlier in my career, I've just said nothing. Um, and for you to be in a position of being an intern and kind of talking to your manager like, wow, well done to you.
Thank you. I leave it to my inability to really like contain emotions, if that makes sense. Like if I'm upset, you can usually see that I'm upset.
Yeah,
And then having to type those commands in really like it just took my brain to a spot that I felt like I was being super unproductive. This is still very much in the very beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement. There's a lot of stuff that's going on in the news. I have the fact that I was raised by my grandmother, who is not that far removed from this. She was
yeah,
born, you know, on a sharecropper's farm.
wow,
Her family picked cotton as sharecroppers, which, you know, was just like another way of like slavery. So that
yeah.
stuff is not at all far removed from me. And so it was more of just, my grandma just texted me. So funny. I just like spoke her name into existence and there she is.
Hey,
Um,
grandma, how
hey
you
grandma,
doing?
right?
Hey, grand.
um,
You have to play this
yeah,
now.
it was more of just I couldn't like work with having to and I had to interface with that constantly.
Yeah,
I mean the command itself was used to update artifacts, which are just like, think about files where we dump data that we need to use at a certain
yeah,
point. And so it was just like a way to update those artifacts, and we would constantly have to do that. And I was just like, I can't even like logically think through the code if I'm thinking about slavery in the United States at this point, right?
yeah, yeah.
That's wild. So that's more of what compelled me. It was like less courage and just more of just like, I can't do my job. Sorry, I can't. And
Wow.
it's really ridiculous, actually. Like it's really ridiculous that I, as a Black woman, have to type this in to
Yeah,
the code. Like it's almost like annoying. Like what?
yeah,
Why? So yeah. Yeah, I guess I say that because I don't want people to always think that it comes from this sense of courage. Like I don't look in the mirror and see myself as like a lion that's just like going in at it. It was like, it came from a place of like, I cannot do my job because this is ridiculous. And at face value, it's ridiculous, right? And he looked at
yeah,
it like, oh my gosh, sorry.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Wow. So I really want to like dig into like what do you do a as a coder or as a um, developer? Is that the right term? Software engineer? Like what does
Who
that
knows?
are those three different roles? Like is a coder different from a developer? Who's different from a software engineer? Like what are the things that you actually do?
Yeah.
So in my mind, um, when I met you, I think it must have been a year ago now, maybe yeah, around that time.
Almost, yeah.
And you said, "Oh, I'm a software engineer." I thought, okay, so you watch Star Trek,
Literally, I've never seen an
and Star Wars. And when you said you don't, I was confused. I was like, then you're not really a software engineer, are you? And so obviously my own naivety and my own stereotypes that I walked in with software engineers like, you can't be a software engineer. You're not the right skin complexion
right.
or gender.
Right.
And so I have all of these kind of major stereotypes. And they're kind of what the media has told me. Hold on, you don't have glasses. How can you be a software engineer? I can keep on going. I can keep on going. There's so many. There's so many, right? Youth have, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. So I guess for me, like, what do you do? Is it like just 001 110 011 110 110? What does that look like?
Did you say hello in binary or something?
I don't know, probably. Maybe. I don't know. Can someone find out what that was in binary and write in the comments or something?
Yeah, right. Right in the comments below. That's fun. I do want to say something though. I do wear glasses. I just don't have them on right now. So
Oh, you wear glasses. Okay, then makes
it's
sense.
official. I'm like software engineer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. In terms of like what we're called, that's really just depends on your company. I haven't found there to be a strong industry standard. It depends on what the flavor of the company is. Some people call them software developers. Some people call them software engineers. Some people call them coders. You got front end, you got back end, you got site reliability engineers. You got all kinds of things in the mix there. Indeed refers to us as software engineers. I technically would be considered a junior software engineer, which means I'm at the level 1, planning to go to level 2 next year, 2021.
Level 2, level up, baby.
Ooh, level up. Let's go.
Level up.
So yeah, I'm considered a software engineer. What I do on a day-to-day basis, with regards to code, so I am responsible for a part of the billing side of our website for employers. We have a dedicated web app that allows employers to.
Oh wait, that's you. That's your fault. So all of the complaints. I'm joking. I'm just. I'm playing.
Yeah, sometimes last week it was my fault. It was.
All the issues that I have is it was because of you. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if you don't want the double invoice or something like that, that might have been me. Whoops.
Wait, before we go into exactly like what your role requires, like you probably can't say it, but have you ever made an error just by not thinking and it just shut down the website for like 5 seconds? Bearing in mind, Indeed's website gets like 250 million unique users every single month. So have you just like took us offline for like 4 hours or something crazy like that?
Oh, that's such a long time. I can't remember a time that I've taken us out in production per se. I've definitely introduced bugs in code into production. I like to joke that it's job security. I don't do it on purpose, but like you introduce a bug, you gotta fix a bug, no?
There you go. That's hilarious.
I can't think of a time that I've done one, but I do remember a time where a colleague of mine who he's very much one of the, when you talk about kind of like the stereotypical software engineer, where he kind of fits that mold. And there are often times where we look at him irrationally with like this God complex, because he just like holds so much of the historical context of our product. He's been with the company for a very long time.
Yeah.
We're usually able to ask him any question randomly, like, and he's in a completely different context and he can give you that answer, right? And so there's this dude, awesome. Like, I want to like be like you when I grow up in terms of like my.
Totally.
So yeah, we get alerts whenever our system goes down, right?
Yeah.
And so there were a flood of alerts that came in all at the same time because our website went down.
Oh, wow.
And this guy that I'm talking about literally just comments under the thread and says, "Oh dear." And that's all he said. Yeah, our website went down. He was like building a new index. There was like some like disconnection, or there was like, I think it was actually like what's called like a TTL, which is like time to live. So like the index had like an expiration on it. And so it killed itself, but like our website relied on it. And so it was dead. And so, yeah, it took us down. But that was just like, you know, somebody who even we look at, you know, as like kind of like the God of our code, makes those mistakes. And so that's all to say that like we all do it. It's nothing to be afraid of. Like, I'm just waiting for my turn to take us down in prod, right?
How long was you down for?
Oh, only like a few minutes. Really, we just had to like, yeah. It was only like a few minutes, but it was.
I mean, so only affected a couple, like 200,000-300,000 people.
Right? Yeah. And that's why I'm saying like 4 hours. That's a really long time.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Like really long time, because you should have tons of like levers to be able to pull, like even if it's like go to a version from like 1998, right? It's like
Yeah.
you should have, you should have some levers to like pull to get you to some state that's not like you can't access our website.
If you had to break down kind of the core skills that make your job what it is, what do you think the core skills that people require or that you need to be good in your job?
Right. Okay. So I think that's like, for me, that's kind of a hard question, because I genuinely believe that anybody can do like software engineering or coding. There are a lot of different, I guess, like types of software engineering or coding that you can do. You can do front end, you can do back end. You can focus more on the pieces that keep the site from crashing in production. Like there are a ton of different ways that you can engage in software engineering or coding. But if I were to say like what skill sets I think would probably make getting into software engineering slightly easier for you, would be like a proficiency for problem solving. Yeah, really, you're presented on a day-to-day basis, so some problem space that you need to find a solution for. You have to outweigh the pros and cons. You need to look at how this problem impacts others. Yeah, so being able to like think through and provide solutions to a problem, I think would make becoming a software engineer slightly easier for folks. I think the next thing would be like pattern matching or pattern recognition. In software engineering, like I said, there are a lot of different like types, for lack of a better word, that you can use, but they all center around kind of like the same principles and patterns. And so once you learn those principles and patterns, you're able to start recognizing them in places and then applying them to other places. So like as I'm in my junior software engineer field, a lot of my coding was looking at patterns that I recognized, whether it was like how to test something or how to create a class. I relied heavily on other people's implementations to figure out what patterns that they use here and how can I apply it to what I'm doing. As I move into like a level 2, I should be introducing some of those patterns, or I should know kind of off the bat what pattern I should be using based off of this principle or based off of that principle. So pattern matching and recognition, I think, would be a good one. Next one, and this is kind of 2 in 1, but you have to be able to ask questions. And that is whether that is to a human or to Google. Because there's going to be a lot of things that you just don't know. It's really funny, the types of things that I end up Googling on a day-to-day basis, which are things that are just like, I should know, but it's like, I want to create a new array in Java. And it's like, I can't remember how to create an array in Java. So I Google how to create an array in Java. So that's like how to Google. And you have to just be okay with, you know, looking for those or seeking those answers. If you don't understand something in code, or if you don't understand a product requirement, you need to be able to ask questions in order to clarify your understanding of what's going on. And so that's what I would say. It's like 2-part, because it's either Googling, you know, asking, you know, the internet, or asking a person to help clarify your understanding. And then finally, the last thing that I would say what is important skill required for software engineering is just some level of reading comprehension. I don't think you necessarily need to love reading. I'm not somebody who historically has loved reading, although since quarantine started, I've become like, I've developed, you know, my own like reading practice, I'd say, habit. We're not quite there, but we'll get there. I would say the Kindle has helped a lot on that. But reading comprehension, because there's a lot of reading that you have to do in terms of like understanding how something works. If you're using a new library or a new tool, oftentimes there are documentation, kind of like a user manual. If you buy a new toy or something like that, you need to like read and understand what it is that they're trying to say. And if you can't quite understand it, get back into that problem solving mode where you put the code in, try it out, and try to figure out what it is that it's trying to tell you. And then once you're able to like see the answer, you can apply it back and be like, oh, okay, now I get what this thing is trying to tell me, so that you can fully understand what it is that you're working on. But yeah, I would say that those 4 things, but I mean, those 4 things can be applied to literally any other profession anywhere. So,
right. So I'm thinking right now, there are a group of executive assistants that will be amazing software engineers.
Actually, I think executive assistants would be fantastic. They're like their attention to detail, like their
Yeah,
way to kind of like they're organizing one person's schedule with like a ton of different
yeah,
moving pieces. You understand the downstream
solving problems.
dependencies.
Yeah,
Exactly. I think they would make a
looking at
fantastic.
patterns as well, that kind of typical behaviors and everything else,
Yes.
spotting the cracks within that. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
I actually think yeah.
So
And
really,
if we don't want to get into like the like nitty gritty of like actually coding,
yeah,
there is a role that like mixes like a product manager, which I would probably lean towards more like an executive assistant, and a software engineer, which is called like a technical product manager. And
nice.
they get to interface and sit in that intersection of what the coders are like looking at and trying to understand versus like the needs of like what the product and the business needs. And so they just like meet in the middle and you're like a technical product manager. And so you can still learn some of the skill sets without having to like actually code and be in tech.
So how do I, if I wanted to be a technical project manager, how does that work? And is that what would I still have to go on a full course, or is there a separate course for that, or do you know the answers? You don't have to if you don't know. It's fine.
Yeah, I don't know the direct answer to that. Yeah, to be honest, I don't know the answer to
Okay.
that.
Okay, cool. But Google is your best friend, like we said earlier. So,
Google is your best friend. I will say don't get discouraged though. Don't look at a job description that says require 2 years minimum, yada 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 yada. Look at what the skill set requires. If you have people in the field that you can talk to about on that position, talk to them. Just randomly reach out to people on LinkedIn. Hey, I'm interested in this field. Can you tell me more about what you do or what I should learn to get into that field? I think it's just more important to let people know that there's a position that isn't necessarily software engineering. Not to discourage you from
yeah,
software engineering to do it, but you can find a sweet spot that like touches on what you were doing before, but also brings a little bit more technical side to things.
that's amazing. Okay, cool. So, also, my other question that I have for you is work-life balance. So you was talking about you did 60 hours on tough times, or normal. That was a good day. That was a good week.
Yeah.
60 hours, 8 hours when it was a tough week. What does it look like now working for Indeed? You said you have to quit your job to get 2 weeks off. Um, what does that look like in your current role?
Yeah. I just want to say like I love like working for Indeed, actually. They're such a great company. It opens my eyes to just what it is, what it feels like to be appreciated and valued for like your skill set. And as a worker, they have never made me feel like I'm replaceable, and the culture doesn't ever make people feel like they're replaceable. I almost feel like
Wow.
it's hard to get fired at Indeed. Like they really work with you, to make sure that you're all right. Um, but yeah, Indeed actually has a culture where they focus on work-life balance. When you come in and you meet with a recruiter, that's one of the things that they sell you on in terms of like why it's such a good idea to work for Indeed. You asked like how do you create a culture like that? Well, Indeed allows us to have unlimited PTO. What does that mean? I mean, honestly, it means you can take PTO as long as you want to.
Yeah.
Um, I would never like take the whole year off or anything, nor that I don't think they would actually do that. But
I'm just gonna say, hey guys, it's January. I'll see you in December.
yeah. To be fair, like you're still responsible for executing against your deliverables. But Indeed has
Cool.
unlimited PTO. I'll give an example of a time I used it recently. We were in the heat of a lot of the Black Lives Matter movement. There are a lot of protests against COVID. We were dealing internally with a lot of like culture shifts, and it was feeling overwhelming for me. I haven't mentioned this once in this podcast, but I also run the Black Inclusion Group at Indeed. And so I interfaced a lot with his content and needed some personal time. And so I took 3 weeks off and came back so refreshed, so connected to the job. And
Yeah.
so, whereas if I was at like another company, I would have never had an opportunity to take 3 weeks off because PTO or holiday pay, I think is what they call it, was like incurred, and like it usually capped out at 2 weeks. So just that alone, to be able to take 3 weeks at a time was like incredible. But in terms of like work-life balance, I work probably 45 hours a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, what about if there's a big deadline or something needs to happen?
Yeah.
How many hours do you do that week?
Yeah, if there's like a big deadline, then where typically I'd stop coding around 5:30, then I usually code till probably like 8. The thing with the skill set is that you can work, 10, 12, 18 hours and not progress any further. And so you really have to be, it's very true. And so you have to be mindful of like how much energy and time you're exerting into it to not make any progress, because you could have used that time to allow your brain to rest so you can come back refreshed and be able to solve problems with like a different perspective. So yeah, I'd say maybe the latest I've ever worked to is probably like 1 a.m. But in that scenario, I recognized that I had worked maybe 3 hours more and hadn't progressed any further than I had did 3 hours prior. So yeah, for the most part, I work about 45 hours a week, unless, there's more that is required of me.
Okay, so, and this is my last question. Thank you very much. This has gone on for almost maybe 3 hours. No, but I really enjoy talking with you. So I guess my question to you, my final kind of question to you is, if you could go back 10 years, what advice would you give your younger self?
Oh, 10 years. Okay, 10 years. Ooh, 10 years. 2010. That was a fun year, man.
This year is a fun year. Enjoy it. Get a tattoo.
Yeah. So if I could go back 10 years, honestly,
if you need to be a bit longer, 15 is all right.
It could be longer, right? I'm like a naturally like introspective person, and so I have gone back many a times to ask myself like what I would have done differently.
Yeah.
But I feel like honestly the only thing I would tell myself is to just dream bigger. I was able to accomplish everything that I've set my mind to so far, and so I would tell myself to dream bigger. Don't limit yourself because of society's expectations or others' expectations of you. Do what it is that you feel called to. Trust your intuition, trust your gut, and dream big. I already work hard, so I got to tell myself that, like, yeah, dream bigger.
Yeah, I love that. No, I love that. That is amazing. I'm going to end it there. So thank you very much, Ashton, for joining us on Let's Talk Jobs.